Hi everyone, today I will explain you linear equations with variables in one side. Before to start to solve linear equations, I'm going to try to explain you what a linear equations means. For example, here we have a weight scale. The weight scale means if you see its inequality position. So basically, linear equation it's an equality. Equality means that if you have one quantity in one side, you have to have the same quantity in the other side. Linear equations will help you to find which quantity is in one side when we don't know some quantities. For example, here we have these two things and we have this one is a variable x. But we need to know or we need to try to find the specific value that makes through this equation or this weight scale. For example, here we have x plus 5 equals to 18. We need to try to find a number that added with 5 gives us 18 to keep the equality in both sides. So basically, your work is going to be to find the value for x. Okay, and you will do it using some operations or some mathematical expressions. For example, here we have another one that said you have to try to identify the things in the terms in the variable or in the equations. For example, here we have the variable that it's the letter. Remember, you can represent a variable with any letter. It can be X, Y, or any letter in the alphabet. Then you're going to have the sign that the signs can be positive, can be negative, can be multiplication or division, or even can be a square. And then the value that is called constant, and the constant it's the number without variable. It's a without these letters. And the equal sign always, remember, linear equations is inequality, so we're gonna have a linear equal sign. And in the other sign, we're going to have another value, or in this time, in this case, is called constant. So this is the term, the variable, the sign, the constant, the equal sign, and the other constant. And we are going to read this as x plus 5 equals to 10. When you try to solve linear equations, you have to remember the inverse operation. If we have positive, we're going to use negative. So that means because we are going to use the transposition of term. If one number is in positive position, we are going to change to negative position. Multiplication to division, division to multiplication, square to square root with the symbol, and square root x to x to the second. So try to use the inverse operation and try to keep on your mind when you try to solve linear equations. In this case, we are going to solve linear equation just with one variable. The variable can be in the left or in the right side. In this case, we have just example with in the left side. So our work is going to be isolate the variable. For example, here we have x plus 8 equals to 12. How are we going to do? First, we are going to try to arrange variables and constants. Variables in one side and constants in the other side. Or it's a isolate. For example, in this case, we are going to write x and then the equal. Because as you can see, the 8, it's a constant or it's the value. So the constant we are going to move to the other side applying the inverse operation. But first we need to copy the number 12, and then we are going to think what is the inverse operation of 8, of positive 8. So the inverse operation it's negative 8, so we are going to move with negative 8. Then we are going to do the operation. We are going to copy x again, and we are going to subtract 12 minus 8, that is going to be positive 4. And our solution for this equation is going to be x equals to 4. If you replace the value 4 in the variable, you are going to get 4 plus 8 is equals to 12, and we're going to have an equality as this weight scale. Now with this one, we are going to do the same procedure, but remember in this case we had the variable negative. The variable has to be always positive. So how are we going to do that? First, we are going to copy the variable negative y, and then we are going to copy the equal sign. we are going to copy first this number because it's in the first position, and then we are going to move the -2 to the other side. If this is negative, using the inverse operation, negative, the inverse operation is positive. So we are going to move to positive with positive sign. And then we are going to have -y equal -5 plus 2. In this case, you have to remember the properties for integers. Different signs we are going to subtract, and we're going to keep the sign of the bigger number. So it's going to be -3. But we have one problem right now. The problem is that -y is a negative, and you can't have the variable as a negative. So how are we going to do? We are going to divide this one by -1. If you divide this side by -1, we are going to divide the other side by -1. And at the end, you will have, if you divide -1 divided by -1, so it's gonna be a positive 1, or it's a positive y. So it's going to be y equal, and you divide -3 divided by -1, it's going to be +3. So the value for y, it's going to be +3. If you add -3 minus 2, it's going to be -5. Now, in the other exercise, we are going to try to do the same. But in this case, first we need to isolate the constant. We have c over 2. And then we are going to write the equal sign, and we are going to write 15. This is positive. Using the inverse operation, we are going to move to negative. And then we are going to write again c over 2, because we have to first to solve this operation, 15 minus 8. That is going to be 7. Now, remember the variable, you have to try to isolate the variable. So this 2 is dividing with the variable. If it's division, we are going to move the number, or using the transposition of term, we are going to move to positive. So it's going to be 7 multiplied by 2. It's gonna be c equal to 14. So the value for c, or for the variable c, it's 14. If you divide 14 divided by 2, it's gonna be 7. And 7 plus 8, it's equals to 15. Now, in this one, basically, we are going to do the same procedure. So we are going to work with this r over 6 equal, and then we have 18. So the 18, we're gonna copy first. Always copy the first number that is in the other side, and then the number. When you move the number, it's going to be after the first number. So it's going to be -12. Why -12? Because if it's positive, the inverse operation, it's negative. So we are going to copy r over 6, and it's gonna be equal 18 minus 12, it's going to be 6. And then we are going to copy r over 6, and we are going to have 6 multiply. Remember, the 6 is dividing, so we are going to move to multiplying. It's going to be 6 by 6. And we are going to cancel this one. And then we are going to have r equal to 36. So remember, to solve linear equations, you have to remember the inverse operation. And this number that is in the other side, you have to keep first. You can't copy first -8 plus 12, because it's going to be a little confused. You can do it, but try to keep the number, the first number, in the first position. And you are going to change the sign just when you move the number or when you move the variable. In this case, if you don't move the number, you have to keep with the same sign.